to have this to show people that, you know, here's what this was in context of going to the fair. Another old photograph, and these are especially hard sometimes. On the back, there is something written, and it's really hard to read sometimes because this is black and it's hard to see. But do your best, get a magnifying glass out and read what you can. And then again, put it in context. Who is in this picture? It may be somebody in your family. You may have been given an old family newspaper. This one is from 1964. It took me a while. I didn't throw it away because, again, this was passed down in my family. But what I found was, inside, they kept the whole paper. I think it was inside this one. There was, oh, it's on the front. One of the obituaries on the front is a family member that's in my ancestry tree. The thing with newspapers, old newspapers, especially 20th century, 1900s, they're very acidic. You'll want to take these to a print shop that can do blueprinting, is what I would recommend, and see if they can scan this and give you a duplicate copy. Still keep this one. Some people want to laminate them. I don't recommend doing that because what happens to the lamination, this paper is already yellowed. It's going to yellow once it's laminated, even in that plastic that you laminate with. So don't laminate it. You should, if it's already been folded, fold it back the way it was. If it hasn't been folded, try to leave it flat. That book that I passed around, I think that company offers something that is about 28 inches wide and so many inches long that will fit most newspapers. So if you have a lot of newspapers, you might want to invest in one of those products to store the newspapers in. But if it's been folded, fold it back the way it was and try to keep it that way. And that's about all you can do sometimes with old newspapers. Don't store a newspaper on top of another newspaper without putting a new sheet of paper in between. Most paper that you would run through a copy machine today doesn't have the acid in it that old paper has. This paper is made on the new process. It's not acid washed when it's from the pulp of the tree. So place a sheet of paper over top of this one before you place another newspaper here. What will happen then is the acid won't wash from paper to paper. You won't lose the print that you have. The sheet of paper will help protect everything in between. You might be given old class photos. And if you do, again, search through the photos and see if you can find someone in your family right here, Grandma Dixon. So that was her class photo. She was fortunate that she graduated because in her era, the girls, from what I understood and what she told me, her dad had to pay for her to go to class 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Girls only at that time were allowed to go to the 8th grade without having to pay for their high schooling the last 4 years. And then later in life, when she remarried a man, and I'm fortunate enough that this got passed down to me. She married not my grandfather, but my step-grandfather, and he is in his class picture from Sheldon, Iowa. So I've digitized these. Again, I've put them in this box to show you basically how things are going to come to you. If you say to somebody in your family, "Hey, I'll take it," you know, this is what you're going to get. Here in a little bit, I'll show you another example of what I've done with a box full of stuff. You may get old calendars. I'll save that for later. You may get old booklets from a company. Like this one has Christmas carols in it. and this was from General Motors. Maybe somebody in your family worked there, and this was a program that they attended, and they picked up the program. So again, this is putting context to your family and what their life was like. And you may have a couple of these, and if you do, donate one. Here's another one of those examples of a fan, and this one has 60 years of service, the independent life celebrates, and it shows different old buildings. Again, some of these old buildings may no longer exist. That may be why your local history society may want it. This may be one of the few photographs that may still exist of that old building. So don't throw things away, donate. Another old ink blotter. Again, and again, another paper. So when you're storing, again, paper between. And here's, again, another fan. So those are the kinds of things that may come in a box. You just never know what you're going to get. But take them willingly, please. And what I say is share them. Once you've organized them, share them with others. Share them with other family members if you can. The company, Safe Publications, also has, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to, a storage box that you can store old scrapbooks in. Again, old scrapbooks from the time period, you'll notice that around the edges here, it's starting to get much more brownish or whatever, and that means that it's deteriorating from the outside in. So if you can't purchase one of those, or if it's too prohibitive, the next best thing to do is leave it as it is, intact, store it flat in a box. Why? Because you're in a box, it's going to keep it out of the dust. Every place has dust, no matter how much you try, every place has dust. So what you're trying to do is protect it from getting dust, because what happens is the dust gets into the edges, and that's why it starts deteriorating. There's little particles in dust that will make it deteriorate. So if you can't protect it some other way, protect it the best way you can. You'll notice on my handout that you'll want to try to store things in a controlled climate. That best climate is going to be like in the interior closet of your house, space on the first floor. Most of us probably keep our house between, say, 68 and 72 most of the time year round. That's ideal temperatures almost for keeping ephemera, keeping paper products. Put them in a plastic container. A container about this size would probably fit under your bed. If you don't have room in your closet, slip it under the bed. You can buy larger ones for larger objects. Again, store them flat, keep them out of the sunlight as much as you can. Get them out on special occasions and show people, but just try to remember that you're wanting to preserve them as long as you can. Some of the other things that you may get, and I got this binder in a shoebox. Everything that's in this binder came to me in literally someone's shoebox. And what's in here are old tax records from Spring Creek Township here in Miami County. And I went through each one and I sorted them out by individual, and I created a tab, a separator of each individual person. This is all one family. It's about 4 different farms that they owned, and it's the tax record from each farm. And then in the back were some of the old receipts where they did business with different companies in Piqua. And again, you want to keep these, and at some point, if you decide that this is something worth donating, contact your local library, local history, your local historical society, and see if they want it. Don't throw it away. At last resort, put it on eBay and sell it. Make some money off of it, because chances are there might be somebody out there. Or ask somebody in your family if they want it. If you've run out of space to keep things, find somebody to take it. Don't just throw this kind of stuff away, because there's history in here. What I've done with this, and I'm that kind of a person because I love history, on some of these old receipts, I have gone and researched where I could find information about the owners of these businesses, and I printed off a copy and put it on the backside of the receipt to show when they were in business, where they were in business, and if there was a biography about them, I put that in here with them. And on one of these, to my surprise, let me see if I can find it. This is what's so interesting about the things you keep and the things your family kept. Let me see here. Here it is. My family kept a receipt from a Dr. W.F. Harbaugh here in Piqua. And I did some research on Dr. Harbaugh, and I found a really cool, interesting newspaper article from the Piqua Register, the 3rd of February, 1881, and Dr. Harbaugh of the city shoots his wife at his own fireside, then goes to another part of the house and blows his head off with a shotgun. And that's exactly how it was written in the newspaper. So I transcribed it here, and I put it on the back of the receipt from my family member who went to Dr. Harbaugh in August of 1880. Just 6 months later, 7 months later, the man commits suicide, kills his wife, and then commits suicide. And it's like, wow. My family member went there for, looks like a refill to druggist for $1.50 is what the doctor charged him to get that prescription refilled. So it's really kind of cool, the things you'll find. Now, every receipt I don't have something on. I couldn't find something on everybody, but I found something on a lot of them, and that's what's really cool. In this shoebox, I also received a few letters that were written, and one of the letters helped me in my research. And that's one of the reasons that you don't want to discount anything. You want to look at everything and try to read everything. Well, I retranscribed the letter, and it took me a while because it was really old script and really hard to read. But in the transcription of the letter, it told me when one of my ancestors passed away. And I did a chart, again, because that's what I do. I have to figure things out. The letter was written by this person over here, a James M. Milhouse, and he's writing to his uncle David Milhouse Sr. And in the letter he says, Aunt Cal, her real name was Carlisle, passed away 4th of September, 1883. So in my family tree chart, here's James writing the letter to Uncle David over here about Aunt Cal up here. So this all came together because of that one letter that somebody gave to me in a shoebox. Now this letter got passed down through probably several generations of family, all in this shoebox, and it was most likely kept in somebody's attic for who knows how long, and it was really hard to read, and it's deteriorating. But when I got it, and in its condition, hopefully it'll stay the way it is now. It's stuck in here in acid-free plastic, and hopefully I'll be able to keep it. At some point, this book will probably get passed to somebody either in the family or to the local historical society. But those are the kinds of things that you'll want to look for. Now, you're probably thinking, Shane, how can you afford all these binders? How can you afford this milk crate? How can you afford the box over here that holds folders? I'll tell you another tip and another secret that I found. Go to a Goodwill store, go to a thrift store, go to garage sales. You'll be surprised what you'll find at those places. A $5.95 binder this size at an office supply store, you might find for 50 cents at the thrift store. That's where I buy them. They're perfectly good. Chances are, if they're newer, they're acid-free. You're going to put stuff in plastic anyway. Look for these things on sale, or look for a company online where you can buy 50 of them for $9, $10, because that's probably half the price what you're going to find them in a retail store. And this holds 450 what I call pocket size photographs, which again, in that box, I had a bunch of those. So this is a cheap way to get the same product versus going to an office supply store. But if you have to go to the office supply store, wait till they put these on sale. A couple, 3 times a year, these are on sale. Go buy them then. That's what I recommend. I found this magazine holder, again, at a thrift shop. Somebody probably had this in their library. They probably passed away. Family got rid of it, took it to the thrift store. I repurposed it. I love it. It holds my folders. Inside these folders, I've got little branches of my family tree, and I've labeled them. And I've got some of my research. Another thing that's going to be your best friend is, and this is where you might have to spend a little money. You can buy one of these on sale sometimes for like $69, maybe regular price $99, but get yourself a label maker. Label your stuff. And you can peel these off. It's a little hard, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to make a label that's going to be there pretty much permanently. But if not, use something like this. You'll see that I use both versions. So here's that, and here's a label. Either way is fine. That's part of what you're trying to do. You're trying to organize so that you know what you've got, where you've got it, and whose records are in each one of these folders. The thing about the milk crate too that I found really cool is it's portable. You can carry it. You can also, if you can't afford a filing cabinet, I'm blessed with 2 4-door filing cabinets full of stuff. And I'm about to buy a 3rd probably. But if you can't afford a filing cabinet, guess what? You can find these in a thrift store too. These fit perfectly, and there's a little rail inside here so that you can use this as a filing cabinet, a portable filing cabinet. This way is letter, and if you have something legal, it goes this way. And the little rail is right there. So, one of the things that I mentioned at the start was that I've been collecting since I was 9. Well, I have proof of that. You all are about to see it. Remember I said that when you have paper, there's only one article in here, and this is a great aunt of mine. This is her graduation. Again, leave it in here as it is. There's no need to put paper in between it. But in my folders, where I have numerous things for different people, this is my great-grandmother. One of my great-grandmothers. And what I've done, as I mentioned, there's several pieces of paper in here, but what I've done between each piece is I've put a sheet of paper between each one, and I file it that way. I've got these digitized. I can go to my computer record and I can pull her up and I can see a copy of her obituary. But what I can't see, and I think I've digitized this, I can't remember. She had to file for a delayed birth certificate because when she was born, they didn't have birth certificates. So I've got a copy of that. And back here, in a letter, dated, let me find it. And I love these letters because her script was so great. A letter dated April the 20th, 1975. I've got some older ones, but this is when I really started getting into my genealogy, and it was just right after Roots, if you remember Roots. In this letter, she says, the names of my parents, Bert and Veda Brandenburg. But she crossed out John and Susan underneath. That was her grandparents. Unfortunate. She told me both in the same letter. The names of George's parents, that's her husband, were Bolivar and Emma Dixon. Great, I had that too. And I have one picture of my mother and dad, and I have that picture today. It was passed down to me. And the tell-all about this, they were all born and lived here in Preble County. So I'm fortunate. In this same letter, she goes on to tell me about what life was like on the farm and about swatting sweat bees and stuff like that. But here's that letter. Here's my proof that I've been collecting for nearly 50 years. So when someone says, oh, yeah, right, Shane, you're not quite old enough. Yes, I am. I started when I was 9, just right after Roots. And Roots is one of the things that got me interested in it. The other thing, too, that got me kind of interested was what was happening in the world about that time. Men were starting to go to the moon. And I thought, gosh, if we ever leave the planet, this was me thinking as a kid, it's like, what's going to be left behind here? How do I know, where my family came from if we go to another planet? Because that's what I was thinking. They were talking about men going to the moon and all of that kind of stuff. And I thought, how will I know, and how will anybody that comes after me know who our family was? So it I don't know, it didn't upset me. It just made me really want to dig into the family more. One of the things that, again, that you can do in binders is the neat thing, when you've got small pieces of articles, they fit in the little photograph size things. And then when you've got larger pieces, everything can fit into different sizes of the plastic pages. I've got copies of letters in here. This is my grandmother's stuff. I made her sit down, and this was the only thing that we had available that day. And I remember it, and it's really kind of cool. But I made her sit down and tell me where she lived all through her life. Well, that's what she did. She listed pretty much every place she lived on this piece of cardboard. So I have that. Again, it's a reference point for me. I can go back and pretty much document then where she was her entire life. I've got her marriage certificate and her second marriage certificate. I've got letters. My grandmother had throat cancer back in about 1962 when I was really little. And she went to the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis, Missouri. And the doctor that she had as a surgeon basically saved her life. I didn't know that until I was told that story many years later, once I could comprehend what it was all about. But I remember visiting with them when I was 5, and I knew my grandmother had been away, but I didn't know why. And after her surgery, because she had throat cancer, they did a cut, and her mouth was a little drawn to the one side. And I remember that, and I kept asking, what's the matter with Mama? Well, I now know why, what was the matter. But her surgeon kept track of her until 1970. She had 71. She had the surgery in 1962. For 10 years afterwards, he kept track of her. He sent her letters. My family, I guess, has always been keepers of things that way. I have those letters. Here they are. And I went online to research her surgeon. And my God, I couldn't believe it. He was the only surgeon in the United States at the time that she could have gone to, literally. So, again, if you've got letters and things like that, do some research on them. You don't know what kind of valuable information may be lurking in those letters. I've got the copy of where she bought their cemetery plots, and then I've got her death certificate. And here at the very end, I have her christening outfit, her gown and her cap. And you can keep things. This was folded. This was how it was given to me. And since it was already folded this way, I kept it this way. If it's not folded, one of the things on my sheet of paper, this is something that you might want to roll. And roll it no smaller than a 4-inch diameter. And if it's X number of inches wide, make sure that what you roll it on is longer than what the article is. whether it's an old map, an old deed, an old blueprint, an old dress. And if you're rolling it, and if it has been rolled, keep rolling it. If it's been folded, keep it folded. This was passed down to me through my mother and from my grandmother, already folded. It was in tissue paper. Don't recommend tissue paper because tissue paper is a different breed. It's probably still got some acid in it. So I put it in plastic. I'm keeping it in here. But if you roll it, the reason I say keep the tube longer than the article so that the ends don't fray or the ends don't start to crumble. If your article is this big and your tube is this big, what's going to happen is whatever's on the edges, on the ends, is going to start to break away. So make your tube longer than what you have here. That way then, if it's an old, let's say it's an old Afghan or an old quilt, something that the family has passed down, and you want to roll it, that's one of the best ways to keep it. Something like this, let's say this is an embroidered tablecloth that maybe one of your ancestors embroidered by hand. Roll it. Don't fold it. What happens when you fold it? That puts a crease in it, and that crease is where it starts to deteriorate. So if it's been rolled, keep rolling it. If it's been folded and you can roll it, try to roll it, because that'll help keep the deterioration from going any further than what it has. That's just something that I've learned, and it's good advice. Those are the kinds of things that you'll want to do when you get something. The other thing is, right now this is still pretty new technology. Label it. This is new technology too. Store as much as you can on these things. If more new technology comes out beyond these things, then if you still have your originals, go back and put them on that kind of technology. So keep updating as things update, if you can afford to. You don't have to, because you're still keeping your originals. One of the things, again, these are like your little best friends. These are cheap, they're not that expensive. You can tab things in folders, you can tab things in binders so that you can easily reference where something is in that binder when you take it to a family reunion and you're sharing it. Use these as labels. One of the things that I found through an ancestry workshop was these little things, and I'll pass these around. You can tear one off and keep one. It gives you the name of the company down there at the bottom. But those are good ways to document your record or your piece of paper that you've found and where you found it. You can probably order those from the company still. I think they're still in business. But you'll want to do that. I document a lot of stuff that way. When I print something off, I'll put that on the back or put it on the bottom of the page. It's a great and easy way. It's like a post-it note, but it's already got the form there. So you're just writing in where it's from. That's a really cool way to do it. I don't know if I have an example of something that I may have done that to in here. But yeah, that's one of the easiest ways to document where you've found something. One of the things that I've done too, when I have, and I'll pass this one around, when I have an old book, what I've done is I've taken it and carefully photocopied it and made a photocopy of it, because if I ever lose the book, then maybe I've still got the photocopy. Keep the old book, but this you can share, because again, the old book may be deteriorating, and so make a copy and then put it in a folder of some kind, and this, when you go somewhere, share it. If your, again, local history society doesn't have a copy, give them a copy. That copy probably cost me $5 to make. I put it on a thumb drive, took it to a print shop, had them printed off. Kinko's, UPS, most any place will print them off. It's like 22 cents a page or something. But share it, because it may be the only copy that the local place has, and it's from your family. So those are the kinds of things that I do. One of the other things that I've done is, and this is a find, and it was broke when I got it, so I keep it together with bungee cord. But this is my obituary file, and this is obituaries that I've kept, either out of the newspaper or somebody's given me. It may be a funeral card too. So whatever it is, I've kept it, and it's alphabetical. And again, you might find one of these at a thrift shop or somebody's yard sale. Start one of these. This is a great way to organize obituaries or any kind of record, really. I've alphabetized by surname. So if I'm looking for Betty Smith, I just go back to the S's. If I'm looking for Shane Conley, I'd go to the C's. But keep an organization somehow. You may want to do, instead of alphabetical, let's say you want to do your main lines of your family. Just do those surnames. Maybe it's your 8 great-grandparents. Just do those 8 names. Everything associated with them or the family beyond them, put under that surname. However you want to organize. And try to maintain the same system throughout, whatever you're doing. You'll notice that what I do is again, my friend and I put a label on the front and on the side so that I can easily see on my bookshelf if I need to pull this out and add something to it, what I'm dealing with. So this is my car family papers, and I received this as a download from the Washington State University Library, is where these records were kept, and they are part of my family. Again, you never know where you're going to come across a record. These records go back to 1911, and in one of the letters, there's a mention of the Wright brothers in Dayton, Ohio. My cousins, who were living between here and Fletcher, were writing a letter to a portion of the family who moved to Cle-Alum, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, Washington, which is about 65 miles east of Tacoma. It's kind of in the foothills of, I forget the mountain range, but it's a small town. It's only about 2,000 or 3,000 people, and it was even smaller then when they moved out there. But they moved out there so that her husband could start a bank. And the family here is writing to the family out there everything that has happened the last 6 months in their life. They're talking about the birth of cows and the fact that they made X number of pounds of butter on the farm. But they went on a trip, and I don't know whether they took the interurban. They may have, because there's a clue. But part of the letter says, Jesse is a conductor on the large city cars. And that to me tells me that it was probably the interurban cars, the interurban railroad that ran between Dayton and Piqua. So that may be how they got to Dayton. Earl goes to school, and Clyde's wife and I were down to Dayton in October, I think. One of the Wright brothers made a flight over the city in their airship. It was indeed a lovely sight. This is 1911. This is like only 7 years, or well, not even 7. Yeah, 7, 8. 8 years after the Wright brothers first flew at Kitty Hawk. Now, you're thinking about somebody living out here on a farm between here and Fletcher, having to get in a horse and buggy and maybe come to Piqua, catch the interurban and go to Dayton, which was probably an all-day trip, to see the festival. They called it the Fall Festival, which there are estimates between 10,000 and 20,000 people attended. There are records, because I've gone to a friend of mine who is on the board of the, and she's now a ranger for the Dayton Aviation Heritage Park. And there are 3 known postcards that were mailed right after this event. This is like the 4th known thing that mentions the Wright brothers after that event, and it's in my family. I think that's pretty amazing. But in this archive out there at the University of Washington, they also sent photographs. They also sent other letters. They sent graduation papers. Again, my family must have been keepers of things from way back when. But another family member who grew up in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and who was traveling in St. Louis, wrote a letter back home, and she's talking to her niece, and she called her nanny. She says, "Dear Nanny, saw these seals yesterday when window shopping, dropped into the drugstore and got them for you just to offset the news. Hired a radio and put it by my bed and listened nearly all night. If there is any feeling of loyalty to our country in the isolationist, I wonder how they faced their conscience this morning with all our dead and damaged, because we weren't ready. Well, anyhow, I hope to be home next Sunday as far as I know. This crazy idiot keeps digging up silly arguments, I think. Merry Christmas, Nanny." They called each other Nanny, partly because Alice Carr was Bessie Totten's aunt, and Bessie went by Nanny also. Can anybody guess the date of this letter? From what I just read?
Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. The letter was dated December 8th, 1941, from the Hotel Chase on Park Avenue in St. Louis, Missouri. And she's talking about getting Christmas seals, because that was a thing back then, was like I think it was the Tuberculosis Society. She picked up Christmas seals to send back to her niece here in Ohio. So again, read every letter. I've got letters I haven't read yet. Trust me. There was an aunt that lived in Dayton. I have a shoebox full, and I haven't gotten to them yet. I've skimmed some of them. She talks a lot about family, but her husband had passed away, and in some of those letters, she's talking about a new romance. So I'm kind of anxious to read those letters someday. I'll get to them, I promise. But those are the kinds of things that you may find in your family records when somebody gives you something. Don't shy away from taking things. And what you have, organize. If you have books, if you're given books, store them tightly on a bookshelf. Use bookends, or use something that's a heavy weight to make sure they're held tightly. The tighter they are on the shelf, the more stability they have on the pages inside. If at some point you want to try to help because maybe the book is oversized, one of the things that you can do instead of storing it this way is to go ahead and store it this way for a while and store it tightly. Again, that's the key here, is because what happens is if you're storing it this way for a while, what happens is the weight of the page, it will start to curl on the bottom. So if you store it this way on its spine for a while, that will prevent the curling and it'll help bring the pages back up. But again, store it tightly. And that's what I do with some of my stuff in my binders. If it's my family group sheets and stuff, not so much. I don't care, because I have that all in a digitized database. But if it's something like in those heavy plastic pages, I will rotate these binders from time to time, just to do that. So, as I said, if it's a family group sheet and something like this, I'll probably just store it that way forever. I don't move these that much. But as I was saying earlier too, one of the things you can do is create a way in which you can find the people in your folder quickly. And one of the ways that I've done that is just use these little tabs and start a family, and each person in that family, like for John Ewing and Elizabeth Ewell, here's their large tab. It's kind of hard to see green against green here, but they have a large tab. They had 4 children. Each child then gets a small green tab that I have created on their page, and then the children for each one is interspersed in between, and that's one way of separating the people of this one particular family. So this is just John and Elizabeth and their 4 children in this little folder here, all by themselves. And I've used tabs to create a separation for each child. You can take that one step further. Once you have each child, then you can use a different color for their children. So for the first child, you might want to, he's green because he's the child of John and Elizabeth. His children, you might want to do blue. The next child, you might want to do yellow. The next child, you can do red, and separate them. That's one of the ways that I have found to help organize your information. I'm one of those people that still keep the paper. Every person that goes into my database has one of these sheets. And along with it, there may be things in here too that I've added that maybe is about those individuals. And I may have this digitized too, but I'll keep that information that I found here with that individual as well. And there may be some research. What I do too is if I need to do further research or I have further information that I want to check out about this person, Post-it note makes these great big Post-it notes with lines already on them. Again, wait for them to go on sale or buy the off-brand, it don't matter. But what I've done here is I've pulled up their burial information of the cemetery where they're buried, and this is my reminder that I need to probably go out there and take the photograph because somebody on Find a Grave hasn't done it already. So, and there's people out there taking photographs every day, and I'm a Find a Grave finder too, so I go out and take some too. So that's one of the ways that you can flag things for yourself if there's work to be done. Another example, I think I've got an example of that in here, is, yes. So like on this person, I've written down some things about them that I think may be true, that I want to add, but I've got to, this is my research note, so to speak, that I need to research this information on this before I add it to my database. So that's a way to organize yourself for what you're doing in your research. I forgot to mention, if you guys had any questions at the start to ask me while I'm going through things, ask. But that's a way. So organize by size, by date, by person, however you want to do it, just get your stuff organized. It helps in the long run. I have 2 bookcases as wide as one of those sections there, 5 shelves. I have 2 of those filled with binders. I have 3 milk crates full of more binders. I have 2 desks. I have 2 4-door filing cabinets. I have 2 closets filled with plastic tubs, some of them this size, some of them larger. I have, I forget how many scrapbooks yet that I'm still storing. But I know, like, one of these tubs is a surname, so to speak, for that family branch. So everything that I've got on that particular family is in that tub. And again, I put a label on it, you know. And so when I start doing more research on that line of the family, I go in to that tub and pull out stuff and start adding it to my database. If any of you have those old family albums with the old self-stick pages, those are bad. Those are your enemy. Get the stuff out of there as fast as you can, because that stuff is deteriorating before your eyes. Remove it, get it into a new acid-free album of some kind. If nothing else, put it in a plastic sleeve and put it in a binder, because those albums are are really bad. They should have never come out.
What about the old Polaroid photos? Like if your grandma took a ton of them, what's the best kind of album to put them in? 'Cause they're heavy.
Something like this. Each individual photograph in its own little sleeve slot. Those will fit in something 4x6. They don't fit so well in 3x5, I don't think, unless you'd like trim them. But yeah, you want to store them probably best in a binder. That I've got some of those too. You're talking about
Instant ones?
The instant ones.
like these.
Oh,
Yeah. The emulsion stuff that was in this, that will start deteriorating, and eventually this whole thing will go away. You won't be able to see the photo anymore.
Right.
Scan it, put it on a disc, put it on a thumb drive.
Okay.
Yeah, but still keep the original.
Right.
Because again, this is going to deteriorate eventually. I've probably got some that are in worse shape than these. This is probably from the 1990s, if I remember correctly. But I've got some that were probably a little older than that. I don't know if I have them in this box. Yeah, this is almost the same thing, and this is probably from the early 60s. Again, what's going to happen is the stuff that produced this photograph is eating into the paper
Right.
every day, slowly, and it will eventually yellow or brown, and the photo will almost disappear on you. So again, scan it, get it to a different type of recovery. Yeah, here's one that's probably a little worse for wear. It's almost to the point where you can see it happening here, and it's sort of the man in the photograph is fading into the background. The colors that produced the photograph when it was new are dissipating. They're just going away. So whenever you get it in the condition it's in, scan it then. And that's the best way, I guess. If you don't have a scanner copier, save them up, take them and have them scanned professionally somewhere. Again, a print shop will do it. There's school pictures. They usually hold up pretty well. Newer photographs like that are probably going to hold up for a while. This is from 2009, and it's still, the colors are still pretty good on it. But photos from the 30s, 40s, something like these, again, these came out of a photo album, and they had to be exercised out. They had to be basically torn out in order to scan them, because they were on a huge page. So digitize them. That's the best advice I think I can give you on that. Because again, they're not going to last forever, not in this condition. And I will probably stop bringing this box and bring another box someday, because I'm going to want to get these stored into a binder myself. I only show this to people to give them an idea of what you're going to be handed. This is something, you know, if you say, hey, I'll take Uncle Charlie's stuff, or I'll take Aunt Linda's stuff if nobody wants it, this is what you're going to get, people. I mean, and the little photographs will fit into those sheets really nicely, and they'll still hold up at that condition. That basically what you're doing is you're stopping the deterioration process by storing it this way. Again, you can put them in a plastic tub, in a binder, store them under your bed. They're out of sunlight, they're out of the heat and anything that might deteriorate them further. If you get other stuff other than ephemera, other than paper, if you get like the flag off of a veteran's casket, do have it tri-folded, and you can buy from a company the shadow box to put it in. Sometimes, many times, you can buy along with that the like a label or a placard that goes on the front of it that'll give his name, his dates of service, and his birth and death. If you can't get that, make one. And if you get, a lot of people like to keep like a flower from a grave or from a funeral or from a wedding. Many people like to press those. I don't recommend trying to press them. The best thing you can do, maybe, and I've seen some people do this, is buy the small little hermetic type plastic things and put it in there, and once you seal it, it's sealed inside. The only way to get in it is break it. But you can buy those. There's companies, again, that sell those that you can keep that kind of thing in. And if you get, let's say, like a china plate or a cup and saucer or a mustache mug, those types of things, something china. Keep it where it's not going to get bumped into, it's not going to fall off of a shelf easily. Try to put it in, I don't have an example, I didn't bring one with me, but try to put it in a base that maybe has like a little edge around it, so that if this is your cup, and find a base so that the cup sets in the middle, and if it does move, it's going to bounce into the side of that base before it goes anywhere, before it falls off the shelf, kind of thing. If you have, a lot of people have, like I know in my family, we were passed down when our church had their 50th or 75th or 100th anniversary. Everybody in church got a plate. And we hung them on the wall. Bad. If it got sunlight, it's starting to fade, because what they produce those with to make that photograph on that plate is the same thing that photographs are made of. As soon as it gets sunlight, it's deteriorating. So again, store them flat. You can buy the bubble plastic sleeves to store them in, or the cardboard sleeves that are acid-free, and store them flat. Store them in a safe place, in a closet, under the bed, kind of thing, and that's where you want to keep them. Bring them out on special occasions. Be very careful with them. And if you wash them with just like, not a thick, heavy detergent, but just a softening soap of some kind. Nothing, don't wash them with like Clorox or something that's got a bleach in it, because you're going to, again, that's going to etch whatever was produced on that plate. So that's something else too. If you've received an old family painting and that's your window of your house and this is your living room, and you know that the sun comes in that way every day at 4 o'clock and it starts shining against this wall, don't put your painting here. Put your painting on that wall where the sun can't get to it, because there's no windows over here that's going to let the sun in. So keep it out of direct sunlight. Again, most homes, we keep our temperature pretty constant, winter, summer, if you've got air conditioning. So put that painting somewhere where it's not going to be in direct sunlight. It's okay, the lights in the room, there's lights in museums and there's paintings hanging on the walls there. What you're trying to do is preserve the painting as long as you can. So the sunlight is coming in this way, it hits over here, bad place. Again, I think I mentioned like quilts, afghans, something embroidered, maybe an old sampler where it was, what's that, cross stitching. Those kinds of things too. Again, out of direct sunlight, rolled up is the best method. But if it's already been folded, just leave it folded. Don't unfold it and refold it differently, because you're just going to create more creases for it to deteriorate. But if you can, if it's only been folded a few times, roll it. That's really the best method. I know I can remember watching my grandmothers unroll Christmas tablecloths and only use them at Christmas time. And then after Christmas, they put them back on a roll and stored them somewhere. But that's how they did it. They even rolled the little hand towels that maybe were in the bathroom at Christmas. They had those on little rolls too. I think they had them on paper towel holder rolls or something like that, like a old dowel rod or something. But I can remember seeing them unroll those as well. The one thing that they did that was probably wrong was after they rolled it, they wrapped tissue paper around it. You don't need to wrap anything around it, just roll it. Let's see, what else that you might get? Jewelry, keep it in a safe. Keep it in a safety deposit box if you can afford it. But if you've got great grandma's diamond ring, keep it as safe as you can. You can buy a small chest type safe, not much bigger than that plastic box, probably for under $200 still. It'll probably withstand temperatures in a normal house fire of up to 1,500 to 1,900 degrees. God forbid if you have a tornado or something happens to your house, that safe may get tossed up in the air, may come back down to earth, but it'll still be in the safe because those things don't usually break open. They're pretty thick. So if you have something of that kind of value, great grandpa's pocket watch from the railroad or whatever, in a safe, that's the best place. Don't store it out somewhere where it can be seen. I mean, I've got a couple of my grandfather's pocket watches. One of them is in a safety deposit box because of the fob on it. The fob was handmade for him because it has a connection to the railroad. The other one I have at home in the safe. I have a couple of cross pins that were given to me in my career that are gold plated. They're in the safe. Those types of things, keep them as safe as you can. If you have stuff in cardboard boxes, try to get it out of the cardboard into acid-free plastic. Why? This is more water-friendly than cardboard. So if you have a flood, and I don't mean a flood as in the river flooding, I mean the bathroom leaks upstairs and floods your downstairs or floods your basement and you had a bunch of stuff stored in cardboard. It's now water-sogged. So stored in plastic, chances are, one of the things too about plastic is helpful sometimes, and it's a little hard to see here, but try to buy the plastic that has like the overlip where if water's coming this way, and if it gets up so far, maybe this will start to float if it's not too heavy, and the water won't go up through here and into there. It's a little harder for water to go uphill, so try to find plastic that has what I call the overlip or whatever. That's a little more unpenetrable for water. Let's see, what else is there that you might have? Christmas decorations that may have been passed down in the family. That's another thing that people like to keep as keepsakes. And I've got some of those too. I've got them from the 1940s and the 1920s. Not very many of them. But again, the new bubble wrap and in a plastic container is probably the best method. If they're in the box, if they're in the original box, keep them there. I know that sounds odd, but they're worth more in that box than they are out of the box. If you want to go to sell them at some point. So keep them in the box. Yeah, the box is made out of paper, but chances are moving them, they're more stable that way because that's the way they were moved. And keep in mind that if you've got some really old antique Christmas ornaments, They were maybe hand blown in Germany, put in that box, put on a ship, shipped over here, put on a truck or a railroad car, and shipped to Piqua, Ohio, and they were still in that box and still unbroken. So that tells you something. That box protects them. But if you don't have the box anymore, bubble wrap them, put them in plastic. What time are we at? We're good. We got about 15 minutes. I can't think of anything else. I mean, my family kept stuff. We kept horseshoes, and we didn't have horses. We had horses when I was little, but we got rid of them by the time I was about 6. But we still had 5-gallon buckets of horseshoes. My mom used them. We found a use for them, believe it or not. And the bits that went through the horse's mouth that held the reins that went back to the driver, she found a use for those too. She found a use for the horse collars that we still had, which was around their neck where the reins tied and went back to the driver too. I should take pictures, but the horse collar, she took it to Him's Glass Shop and had a mirror put in them. The bits, my dad welded a little piece of angle iron to the one side of the bit was round like this on one end, and then had a straight piece or a couple straight pieces in the middle, and then another round piece here. She took and had my dad mound or weld to the bit a piece like this, and then it went down this way. It attached to the wall. Here's the ring up here. Then it hang down, and then here's the other ring down here. She used them as towel holders in the bathroom to hold the hand towels. The cow stanchions, where the cows would go into the milking parlor on my grandfather's farm, they took those out, took them down to Him's Glass Shop, had like a rubber cement type thing put in them, and she had a mirror in there, and that hung in the hallway. We didn't throw anything away. It's obvious. I mean, I'm not throwing stuff away, and I'm creating more. I'll leave you with this. You're creating things to yourself today as individuals that maybe somebody in your family, generations from now, might want to know about you. So as you create things, make a place for them. I'll give you an example, and I should have brought that tonight. I could have. I have a binder, and I belong to a walking club. And in our walking club, we get these little booklets, and we get stamps in them every time we do a walk. And after so many walks, like 10, 25, 50, 75, you get a little patch and a little pin, kind of like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. So if you've been in the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, and you still got your stuff, make a binder. Put all that stuff in a binder, because somebody in your family may want to know, hey, they were in the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. How cool is that? But in my walking club, I have all of my little patches and all my little pins from my time walking. Through my career, I have been awarded certificates for different things. I have all those in a binder. And I have on the back, if it's not evident on the front, what the certificate was for, or what it was about, or why I was given that certificate. It may have been a training certificate. It may have been a safety certificate. It may have been a 5-year certificate, a 10-year certificate, that kind of thing. I have all of those. I still have all of my grade cards. All of my grade cards are in a binder by the year,
How'd you do?
Depends on the subject. But I still have all my grade cards. I have all of my mom's grade cards except for like 1 year, and we don't know what happened to it. But if I still have it, I'll find it. If it got lost somewhere, it got lost. But I have all of my mom's grade cards. She kept all of her grade cards. Those are the kinds of things that people will want to know about you. If you're taking pictures on your phones, take some of those pictures, put them on a thumb drive or put them on a disk, and save them, because you may not always have your phone. So while you have your phone now, take some of those photos off, put them on a different format, and save them that way. Identify them as to time and place that what you were doing. Was it Christmas? Was it Thanksgiving? What have you? But save them, because people they'll want to know about your life. And we're leading interesting lives. One of the things that I remember from a workshop that I attended, people in old photographs from, say, the Victorian age, always looked so unhappy and so stern. Well, they had to sit still for like 3 minutes for the photographer to take their picture. But you know what? Those people laughed and carried on the same as we do. They had conversations the same as we do. They weren't any different. But in those photographs, they looked like they were just serious mad all the time, And they weren't. They had fun. I'm not saying keep everything, but keep the important stuff. You'll know what the important stuff is. I know that here recently, here in Ohio, when they changed how you renew your driver's license, they punched like a hole or something in your old one and gave it back to you. And they gave you another little piece of paper that said to keep this, and then you'll get your new license in the mail in about a week. Guess what? Shane kept his old driver's license, put it in a binder, he kept that piece of paper. Because again, that's a record. And that record tells the future generations where I lived and the time frame that I lived in, those 4 years. And that may be one of the few things that survive out of my existence, is that plastic piece of driver's license. So keep that kind of stuff. What's some of the other things that you should keep? I've got what they called cradle roll records when I was in church. I've got some of my old projects that we did in church where we did little Bible verses on popsicle sticks. We glued popsicle sticks together, made them like a square, and then our Sunday school teacher gave us a Bible verse, and we pasted it onto those, and then we put a little piece of ribbon at the top that we could hang it up on the wall or give it to our mom or something. I still have a couple of those. If you've attended concerts and you've still got your tickets, that's another thing that people will want to know about you is, hey, they went to see Elvis Presley, or they went to see Barbra Streisand, or the Everly Brothers, or whoever. I mean, it's cool to go back and learn about your ancestors and what they did. So let your descendants learn about you and the things that you did. And it may seem insignificant now. I was fortunate enough that I was around when the Freedom Train came through, and that was the bicentennial train for the United States. And it came into Dayton, and my mom and a couple of my sisters went down to see it. I still have my ticket to get on the Freedom Train. One of the things that I saw on the Freedom Train was the ruby slippers and the dress that Dorothy wore in The Wizard of Oz. So as part of that ticket, the best, my memory that I could remember about that event was, this is what I saw on the train that I remember. And I wrote that and put that with that ticket. I still have all of my 4-H stuff. I have a lot of my FFA stuff. I have a lot of the ribbons that I won for my steers that I took to the fair. Again, those are things that my descendants will want to know about.
How do you store your ribbons?
Again, in this, laying them flat, and a sheet of paper in between them. It's hard to fit them into plastic because they're oversized, and I'd have to really buy some big sheets for that, because some of the ribbons are, they've got the rosette at the top, and then they've got like the 3 things that come down sometimes, and then sometimes they've got extra like, not ribbon, but like a cord on the sides of them too, and then inside that rosette they may have a little piece of metal that says 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever it was on it. So I just have them flat, and I have them in an oversized one of these, all of them under my bed. Along with another box that holds an Afghan that my grandmother crocheted, and another box that has my great-grandmother made hot pads. And I have some of the handmade hot pads that she has. Those are stored flat in a plastic box under my bed. And then my other grandmother made what we called a patchwork quilt. It wasn't a designed quilt, it was just old scraps of clothing cut in like 4-inch squares. And for a few years, I was rolling it up. But I got to the point where I don't have any room in the closet anymore for rolled up stuff. So I folded it twice, and it's in a pretty big oversized box under the bed.
Do you ever want to display some of your things?
Yes, and I do.
And how do you do that? Do you use shadow boxes or?
Yes. We have sports memorabilia in our home that are in shadow boxes.
What is a shadow box?
Huh?
What is a shadow
What is a shadow box? A shadow box is a wood frame in the back, wood frames on the sides. It's about 4 to 6 inches thick sometimes, mostly 4, has glass in the front, and you can then place the article inside the shadow box in the back, and very carefully I've taken it to different hobby shops, and they pin it to that backing so that it stays in form, and then they put the front on the box, and then you can see through the glass to see it, and then as part of that you can have your certificate of authentication there with it. And let me see if I've got an example of one of those here as a photo. But that's how, yeah, here we go. So, like I have Boomer Esiason signed jersey and a Anderson. So these are in shadow boxes. The helmets that we have are in again, a plastic box that has the certificate inside it, and the box keeps the dust off the helmet. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a shadow box. And what it does, you can keep the whole jersey in there. A couple of these we've done one way, and then a couple we've done another way. These are all in the basement, out of direct sunlight totally. Let me see if I've got another photo here. Some of the, we've got a couple sports memorabilia blankets. We have them on hooks on a rod. We take them down, we put them in the dryer on a low heat setting, almost like a fluff, just to get the dust off of them every once in a while, and then hang them back up. Kind of like a tapestry. So that's what I'm talking about, I guess. If you have a tapestry or something like that, hang it so that it's flat against a wall, out of sunlight again, and then just once a year or twice a year, take it down, put it in the dryer, gentle fluff. Don't put any fabric softener sheet in with it or anything, because that again will add something to your fabric that you don't want. Just, you're trying to get the dust off of it, it's all you're trying to do. And then just display it back again. That's what we do. And we have, I can't tell you how many pieces. It's in the hundreds of sports memorabilia, along with all of my family memorabilia that's in the house. And I have 14 hand-painted paintings that one of my great uncles did. I have about half of them on walls displayed, and the other half are in the best way to describe it, they're a painting archive box, basically, up off the floor, because I don't want the dampness of the basement and away from the walls in the basement, stored in the basement in those painting archival boxes. And what we do, we kind of rotate the pictures, the paintings out. So in other words, this one hangs up here for a year or two, goes into a box, the one in the box comes out. Just to give them some air, because in the box they won't deteriorate, but they paint oils, old oils especially from the 50s, 60s, 70s, have a smell to them that a lot of the newer paint that you buy today doesn't. So that smell will build up in the box. So when you take it out, it'll kind of have a little smell and let it air out. So that's what we do with those. Yes.
Military memorabilia from your family. This has been probably 10 years ago. I sent for my father's military records from the National Archives.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard back from them, they asked me if I wanted any medals that he had been due.
Mm-hmm.
He probably had already received them, but by that, I mean, I was pretty darn old by that time, so who knows where they went. But I said yes, and at no charge, they sent me all of the medals he was due, which were a surprising amount. But I had taken him to a framer, which I got the idea from Linda because she had her uncles done.
Yes.
But he framed them in. It's sort of like a shadow box. It's more like a thick picture frame, and
Yes.
he
This
arranged
company
them
sells
all.
Yep.
And it put a picture of my dad. I had a picture of my dad, the ship he was
Yep,
he
my
was
alarm.
stationed on, and I know what that is.
Yep, that means it's 8 o'clock.
But what do you suggest about, the ribbons and things that you might have?
Yes. A display case, like you might see at a flea market or a shadow box. Again, this company sells them.
Mm-hmm.
So something like that. I have some of
nice.
a great uncle's. Again, I did the same thing with him. His went to another member of the family, and I was disappointed. So I sent and got copies too. And I have them in a frame with his photograph. And I have a brief thing over here that talks about where the medals came from. And then in my database, I have the paperwork behind it and the accommodation that was written for one of the medals that he received and why he received it and stuff. So I have all of that. But yeah, like a display case or a shadow box, something of that type, to put all of them in so that they're all collected together. And that's one of the things. I have the patches that I received from my walking club, and I think Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. I wasn't a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout, but in 4-H you really didn't do pins. But I think the Boy Scouts did pins for different things, like hat pins. When I say pin, I mean like the thing that it's the little thing here that has the post on it, and then it has the little back. I have pins from my walking club that what I'm going to do is purchase one of these cases and put all of them in their numerical order. So I'll put in my 25 walks, 50 walks, and so forth. Again, and display them that way. And then they're stored that way too. If I decide I don't want to keep them out somewhere, I can in the closet or under a bed. Thank God for the spare bedroom. So those again are some ways to do it. There's hundreds of different postcard albums in here. You can go online. There's more than just one company. There's several companies out there that what you're looking for is like a collector's supply house, and they will have the boxes, the envelopes, the albums, the things that the magnifying glasses, the lights, and then some of the things too will also tell you like here is an electric drying press. So if you have something that needs to be pressed out, maybe it was curling up, you can spend the money on those. They're not cheap, but I posted something the other day online. I said if I win the lottery, I'm going to still be myself, but my genealogical purchases will be glorious and epic. Because I could go through this catalog and buy one of everything if I won the lottery. But since I haven't won the lottery, I have to sparse out my purchases now that I'm retired and on a fixed income. And that's one of the ways I do that is that tip I gave everybody is go to the flea markets, go to the thrift stores. that's how you do it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Shane Conley.
You're welcome.
Yay!